Well, welcome and thank you for coming here this evening. My name is Heather Criss, and a little bit about me. I've been working with Mendocino County Health and Human Services Agency for the last 3 years. I work in the prevention and planning unit, so we work on all sorts of prevention issues: drug and alcohol, obesity prevention, anti-bullying, anti-distracted driving, lots of different prevention issues. I administer 2 grants. One is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program Education Grant, which is a nutrition education grant targeted at low-income populations. So we do direct education. We do a lot of community outreach. My favorite thing is the Rethink Your Drink and reducing sugar-sweetened beverage consumption. We've also been working a lot on policy systems and environmental changes. And the other grant I work on is an active transportation grant, which focuses on school-aged children and getting them normalized into walking and biking to school. And we do pedestrian and bike safety. We actually bring bikes out to the schools so the kids get some hands-on experience riding bikes. Because it is amazing how many kids live within walking and biking distance from schools and they don't even know how to ride a bike or understand the basic rules of the road. And we also work on the wellness policies so that the schools can support that. So the overview for tonight, talk about why I'm here, why it's important to talk about childhood obesity, what most of us already know that are little no-brainers, and then a look at other factors that feed into the childhood obesity epidemic. I have a little bit of data and information for Mendocino County and Willits. And then now what's going on. So there's a lot of things that are already happening in the community to address childhood obesity, and then some steps that you can take in your own life to help out with this. And then we'll have time for some questions. So what's going on? So in the last 35 years, there's been a 47% increase in the children with a body mass index of greater than 25. And then in 2014, the percentage of U.S. children that are obese or overweight is 32%. And in Mendocino County, as of last year, of 12 to 17-year-olds, are overweight or obese. Health factors of obesity bring significant risks that current levels continue. This is the first generation of children that will have a lower life expectancy than their parents. And so when we talk about obesity too, it's not a cosmetic thing. There's severe health risks. Obesity does affect self-esteem, and people definitely get stigmatized by being overweight, and it can also lead to eating disorders, which cause other health risk factors. But when we talk about obesity prevention, it's not about the cosmetics. It's about reducing chronic diseases. Type 2 diabetes is on the rise, heart disease, stroke, premature death, or disability. And a lot of the disabilities are due to bone and joint pain caused by carrying on that extra weight. Things we already know. So nutrition obviously is a huge factor in obesity. So we want to avoid sugars, avoid processed foods, trans fats, hydrogenated oils, all of those things. And eating more vegetables, fruits, and whole grains, and then drinking more water. All of that powers our body so we can be more physically active. So we need to move more and really have less screen time or sedentary time. Being sedentary is now on the same level as a risk factor is smoking in the United States. It's becoming a huge, huge problem, people not getting up and moving often. And then family. So our metabolisms tend to be like our parents, and so there's genetic factors that play into obesity, and then also your family's culture around food. Other factors, again, a little bit more in depth with the family and social. What are your family's eating practices? What are other mentors or influencers in your children's life? What are they modeling? And how much screen time are your children allowed to have every day? And what stress levels does your family or social circle experience? And then there's the environmental factors. Are your streets walkable? What do your stores that you shop in look like? Do you have access to parks or other outdoor activities? Do the schools your children go to have wellness policies that are enforced? And are there any other school supports? And how many advertisements do your kids see on a daily basis? Has a huge impact on what they like. So it affects what they eat and drink. So I really didn't get into a lot of the economic factors because it gets very complex and there's a lot of data out there. There's not a lot of data for Mendocino County for us to look at specifically, but lower income families have a much higher rate of obesity, and Willits in particular is about 49% at 185% of the poverty level, which is what they look at to be able to qualify for services such as EBT and CalFresh. And a closer look at the social and family influences. One of the biggest things you could do as a parent is eating meals with your kids. Having that dinner time allows for not only social development, there's a lot of educational benefits they find that people who eat with their families 3 times or more a week are half as likely to get C's or below in their grades. They think some of it has to do with language development. Adults tend to use lots of words, and when you're having that communication with your family, you pick it up and you learn how to use it, and you learn how to use it properly. So there's a benefit that way. And then Harvard did a study where if they're eating meals with their families, they're far more likely to be eating the amount of recommended fruits and vegetables every day. They're far more likely to be able to try new foods and be accepting of those new foods. And even if they don't try it the first time, within a few times of being offered that food at the dinner table as a family, they will pick up eating and trying those new foods and have a more favorable opinion of that food as time goes on. Also, other benefits to eating as a family: your child is less likely to be depressed, have suicidal thoughts or tendencies, or develop eating disorders. And the court-appointed special advocates, which is CASA, C-A-S-A, says their children who eat with their families are also much more confident, so they're more likely to say no to drugs. So there's lots of benefits to eating with your family. And Brigham Young in 2008 did a study that moms who, even though they have to go to the grocery store and prepare meals, have way less stress in their lives if they're sitting down and eating meals with their family. And I thought that was interesting because dads didn't have that same response. Even though there's more to do, that sitting down at a meal with the family reduces stresses for moms as well. What are you modeling? So if you're eating as a family and you make that a priority, your kids are going to feel that that's an important and have value as well. And are you drinking water and not sweetened beverages in front of your kids? And this goes for teachers too. If there's a soda on your desk, are you modeling good behavior for your students? Not that you don't get to drink that, but if it's not in a noticeable cup, then that definitely helps promote not drinking sodas to the kids. And what you're eating too. If you've got the bag of candy on your desk or, on the kitchen counter, it's not modeling very healthy behaviors. If you stress eat, your kids are more likely to stress eat. And one of the things that gets paired with that is how you look at food, like in celebrations or family events with others. Like, we tend to have like these great feelings when we're out and we're with family that we care about. And so if it's about food and being able to overeat, and it's sugary foods or fatty foods, things like that, those become like an emotional comfort, which people will use when they're feeling stressed. And the other thing is, if you're reinforcing good behaviors with food, like you can have a candy or you get a slice of cake or things like that, or screen time. So you're reinforcing a good behavior with a reward that isn't healthy. It's not good because you trigger those little brains with their kids are developing all the patterns that they're going to make for life in their brains. And so those patterns are not good patterns to reinforce. Using spending time together, things like that would be a much better reward. And are you modeling being physically active? Do you come home and then that's kind of it. You're done for the day, or do you get out and walk or garden or do something active with the kids? So screen time is a big, huge thing for a lot of reasons, because screen time sitting there equals sedentary behavior. So it's very hard to be active, and I know that all the video game companies have made all of these fun gadgets to make you think that you could be active in front of the TV, but they're showing that it's not really correlating to kids getting enough activity. And so over 2 years old, you should have less than 2 hours daily on all devices, and that's computers, phones, TV, and we tend to carry our phones around with us and forget that's a screen, 2 hours or less. And again, modeling good behavior. You shouldn't be at the dinner table watching your phone. You're there to interact with your family and doing more activities together. And even if it's board games or things, but where you're interacting with the kids and it's not sitting there in front of the screen, getting out and going for a walk after dinner, or getting up and getting them to school by walking them to school, or even walking them partway to school, finding some place that's a reasonable distance that you can park and then walk the kids to school is great too. One of my big soapbox things is with the screen time is your kids are being bombarded with advertisements, and it doesn't matter whether they're playing a video game or whether they're on Facebook or whatever it is. The corporations have found a way to get advertisements into everything your kids are watching on TV, all of this stuff. And the food and beverage industry alone spends $10 billion a year in advertising to children, just specifically food and beverages to children. And there's got to be a payoff for them. And I think it's $40 billion a year is spent on those products that they're targeting at children. So, and only 5% of that money that's spent is on healthy food and beverages. That dollar figure does not even include the amount of money they spend on their product development to make the product more appealing to the children. And I have one plug for a book that's a fabulous book. It's called The Dorito Effect by Mark Schatzker. And it's about flavor and how it relates to the obesity epidemic. And it's all about this product development, how different corporations that make these processed foods make that food more palatable. So once your kid gets in, you're hooked for life. And so stress levels, there's been a huge link between the adverse childhood experiences and obesity later in life. So things like divorce or the death of a loved one, things that are traumatic to the child, abuse, lots of those things have a direct impact on whether or not they're going to be obese when they're older. So trying to limit stress levels, things happen in life, things are stressful in families, but trying to give the kids like coping mechanisms that are outside of food-related coping mechanisms, getting out and getting that physical activity is really, really important. The stress hormones that you hold on to can cause the weight gain, and it can also make it really hard to lose weight. So finding those ways to soothe without eating are extremely important. And stress lowers your energy levels, and it's hard to get up, to get outside, to get some activity, let alone go in and make a healthy meal if you're feeling stressed. So finding your way to cope and helping your child learn how to cope with stress is huge in preventing obesity. A closer look at what some of the environmental factors are. So the streets being walkable. Are the streets safe? Do they have sidewalks? Are there crosswalks? Are there things marked? Are the speed limits on your street at a safe speed so you can walk? And then are the drivers on your street safe? I know I lived on a street where there was a lot of young drivers way at the other end, and it was just not a place that you'd want to send your kids out to go play outside in the front yard, because it was a 25-mile-an-hour road, and those teenagers would go by at 50 miles an hour and not realize, that there's kids playing out in the street. So all of these things to think about when you look at if your streets are walkable. And then stores, where do you shop? And what does it look like? Does it feel clean? Does it feel safe? When there's lots of advertisements, here again, I was just talking about as much money as the companies spend on advertisements. Like having those advertisements bombarding your kids when you're walking in to go get milk down at the corner store, it does more damage because it's just constantly telling your kids that, buy this product, buy this product. Are the healthy items closer to the front of the store, or do you have to go all the way back past the chips, past the candy, past the alcohol? And then paying attention to the counter, if there's lots of candy, all that product placement, the companies buy those sections right up near the checkout stand, and so that's why their product is right there. And it's not considered in that 10 billion for the advertising, but it is advertising. Your kids are seeing that. Those stores are paying for that product to be there because on impulse, so many people want it. And when you're there and your kids are tired and you're ready to shop.
If I go into Safeway, the products that are closest to the check stands, that they are there because those food manufacturers paid extra money to have them there?
Yes, so when you go into whether it's Safeway or even your local convenience store, those products that are close to the register that are up there in the display boxes are because the companies paid more for that space.
Wow, and I noticed in our local Safeway, though, they're beginning to have more fruit at the end caps.
Right.
So are fruit distributors paying more?
I think that that's more consumer demand, just like they're having more organic foods in the stores, and there's more of a move towards that. I don't know the names, but I know that there's some major grocery retailers across the country that are moving. Instead of giving your kid a free cookie, they will give your kid a free piece of fruit. So some of those changes are because customers are demanding it. And then parks and outdoor space. It's really a benefit if you have a park or an outdoor space that's walkable. If you can get there, usually within 1.5 miles, they figure is a walkable distance because it takes the average person about 30 minutes to get there. Is the park safe and clean? And do they have facilities like bathrooms or playground equipment or lighting for when it's dark? The Howard Wood Johnson Foundation did this whole study on the benefits of living close to parks and green space. You definitely increase your chances of getting actual physical activity, especially as a child. And they find that boys benefit a little bit more than girls. They increased like threefold their physical activity chances and opportunity. And it also improved mental health and reduced stress. So living next to or within walking distance of green space is a huge benefit. All right, and so school wellness policies. The USDA and California have recently passed like some really great laws that the school districts, if they're USDA funded through their food programs, have to adopt. And so they have to do with like smart snacks. So the school can't sell snacks that have so much sugar or so much salt in them. There's all these ratios per serving. So that's really helped because schools have not always sold the most nutritional things. And then one of the big things too is healthy fundraisers. And so all of those like cookie dough sales and See's candy sales can't be done before school for a half an hour or after school for a half an hour. And then school vending machines that sell sugar sweetened beverages, so sodas, Gatorades, also cannot sell within those times. They have to lock them down. Some schools are better than others at enforcing those rules, and so looking about whether or not your school is enforcing those is extremely important. And remembering too the modeling of the behavior. If the vending machine for the soda and or the Gatorades are still on site, that's a huge product placement advertisement that the kids are seeing during school hours. Even though they can't access it then, they can later on in the day or earlier in the morning. What behaviors are the teachers modeling? Are there vending machines in their lounge, those things. And then other supports in schools. Is there physical activity opportunities outside of a PE class or recess? Do the teachers have the kids get up and get around and move around? Does the school have advertising? We are kind of lucky because we live in this rural community, so our populations are lower. So some of these big companies don't find it financially beneficial to advertise in our small schools, but in some of the larger schools, in other areas, you'll go in and it wouldn't be odd to see like a McDonald's sign advertising McDonald's or Coca-Cola or something like that. So, because it does bring money into the schools, that we're not sitting by and letting that happen. Okay, and then the advertising. And so they say children between the ages of 2 and 11 are seeing about 25,000 or more ads a year. And yeah, it's kind of outrageous. And that's, like I said, not including product placement. This is on TV, billboards, in magazines, on their phones, all of that. They're just bombarded with these ads. A lot of money spent in the development of those ads to target the kids and provoke that desire response in them. And so marketing has been found to be directly linked with obesity. And when these corporations get these kids hooked, the brand loyalty from if you have that emotional response as a child usually lasts way through adulthood and then into the next generation. Because we tend to like what our parents like, even if we think we don't, we do. And kids don't know the difference between like a television show and the commercial at the younger ages. Their brain hasn't developed enough to differentiate. And they also don't know the difference between an advertisement and information. It's all the same to them. And so hitting those kids when they're young is extremely important. And again, only about 5% of the advertising they see is healthy advertising. I'm going to preface this data part with it's very hard to get data in Mendocino County specifically for a wide range of things because our population is under 100,000 and a lot of the data collectors use 100,000 as the population base, like per 100,000. So I have data points here, but there's a lot of stuff that I've looked for that I can't bring because all of the estimates are unstable. So, but some of this is shocking. So, and I said in the beginning too, 40% of the youth 12 to 17 in Mendocino County are overweight or obese, which is way above the 32% on the national level. Only 46% of 5 to 11-year-olds are active for an hour or more a day. And if you think about that age range, that's the age range where they should be bouncing off the walls and, you know, mom sends them out until the street lights come on, you know, and these kids are not getting that activity. 51% of the children and teens aged 2 to 17 eat fast food once or more times a week. So over half are reporting eating fast food more than one time a week. One thing to keep in mind too, because we tend to think of just like McDonald's and Burger King and Taco Bell as like fast food. And so when kids are doing the self-reporting for these surveys, they don't take into account like other like pizza or going to the little taquerias, the pay at the counter type. Would be considered fast food to the state when we look at fast food restaurants, or even like Subway, the sandwiches, the delis, those quick things. Kids, when they're self-reporting, don't tend to think of those things. And then 42% of children 2 to 11 years old consume 5 or more vegetables and fruits a day, or servings of fruits and vegetables a day, and only 37% of teens 12 to 17 consume the 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. So both of those are under half in the consumption of fruits and vegetables, which if you're fueling your body, you won't crave as much if you're getting the proper nutrients. So I kind of always think of that when I see that, because these kids in the processed food are not getting what they need out of it. And then we don't have a figure in Mendocino County for youth for diabetes, but 8.9% of adults in Mendocino County have diabetes, and that's diagnosed cases. And it's not pre-diabetes. This is actual cases of diabetes, and the same 7.8% of adults in Mendocino County have heart disease, and both of those are related to obesity. I have a little clip of a map, and this is from the California Department of Public Health GIS mapping, and they're going through some upgrades. So I wasn't able to get the names of the stores or the fast food restaurants, but you can kind of see this is all up and down Main Street here in Willits, how many fast food. So that is the Burger King, McDonald's, Taco Bell, Jack in the Box that you guys have here in the purple. And then the yellow one down at the bottom is Subway, and then the rest are pizza and taqueria places where, like I said, the state of California considers like fast food. It's not a sit-down restaurant type place. And so I think that's kind of a lot of places to go and grab fast meals that don't have the best nutrient density per calorie intake. And I overlaid the grocery stores in the next one. This is a little bit outdated because I don't see Mariposa on there, but these are the Safeways, the red one right in the middle, and then there's other little markets. One of them is the Liquor and Market, though, on the corner of Valley. So, I mean, if it gives you an idea of like what they consider a market. And then according to the GIS, there's 4 parks in Willits, but I happen to know that the green space there in the middle, that's the rectangular shape, is just a big field on the side of the highway. And so I don't see anybody letting their kids play there on the side of the highway. And the other little triangular space down at the bottom is also kind of like a grassy area right off the highway. Not really a park, but you guys do have 2 nice parks here in Willits. So it does serve quite a bit, but the whole other side where like Blosser Lane and stuff on the other side of Willits, they really don't have access to those parks or green space. And it's really sad because we have all these mountains around us, but most of that's private property and you're not going to be accessing those as green spaces. I pulled up, there's this site called Walk Score, and so you could type in your zip code or whatever and it comes up, and they said for downtown Willits your walk score is 83 out of 100, which I think is actually kind of high because I have walked around in Willits, and like down Main Street, it's fine. There's sidewalks. If you get off of Main Street, there'll be a sidewalk for a block, and then it disappears, and it might reappear on the other side of the road. And not all of them are in the greatest condition. I think that that's a very high estimate of your walk score here in Willits. And so this is pretty interesting. So this is the Fitnessgram data. So the fitness tests that the kids take every year, they take it in 5th, 7th, and 9th grade. I have here the 5th grade results, and we can look over. So the aerobic exercise, so this HFZ, so percentage of 5th graders in the healthy fitness zone. And so 63% of California kids are in that healthy fitness zone, whereas 55% in Willits. And that's within a reasonable margin. 30% of the California kids need improvement. And we're at the exact same thing, 30%. And then 6.8% are in a need improvement and they're at a health risk with their aerobic activity. And then in Willits, it's 15% are at a health risk. So that's double what the state of California is. So I thought that that was significant. And then the body composition, which is a skin fold test and a BMI, and then they give them a score. And so 59.6% of 5th graders in California are in the healthy fitness zone. And we actually, in Willits, it's 70% are in the healthy fitness zone, so that is good. It's 19.7 in California need improvement. And I'm not sure here's where that data thing for the small, because it's a small group, there's none in the need improvement, but there's 30% in the need improvement because of a health risk in the BMI. And the other scores are interesting, but I think the aerobic and the body composition are some of the major things that are looked at. Ninth grade, I skipped seventh grade because it runs pretty similar to fifth grade, but the aerobic healthy fitness zone for California is 63.5 and it's 57.1 in Willits. The need improvement, it's 23.4% for the state of California and 13% for at risk. And then we jump over to Willits. At health risk is 35.8%. So that's 20.7% or 22.7% more than the state average. So that's definitely something. By ninth grade, there's something going on. And then the body composition here is 63% and then to 57 in Willits. But the ones at health risk were at 28.6 in Willits versus 17.5 at the state level. So it is an issue here to definitely address.
What is body composition?
Body composition is a combination of scores for, there's like a skin fold test, which is like percentage of body fat, and then their body mass index.
Are the Willits schools familiar with this data, or?
They're required to do this, so they get the results every year, and it's actually on the California Office of Education website. Anybody can access it. It's data we bring to them when we work in the schools. But if we're working in elementary school, they might be worried about the fifth grade, but they're definitely not taking into consider the seventh and ninth. So it's definitely going to be more relevant to the middle schools looking at that, even though it starts at a young age. So strategies and steps to take to help break the cycle. Things that are already being done in the community. 2 years ago, in 2015, the Frank Howard Hospital and Ukiah Valley Medical Center, Mendocino County Health and Human Services Agency, and then the ARCH, the clinics, had gotten together and done a community health needs assessment. And through that process, there's a group of people working on a community health improvement plan. And one of those groups actually focuses on childhood obesity and family wellness. And so there's stuff going on. It's kind of slow going right now, but we're getting a lot of community input and trying to figure out how to get consistent messaging out there so that all the agencies and everybody who's working in nutrition is reinforcing those same behaviors and trying to maybe get some sort of logo so it's recognizable, because here again, branding works. We know that because corporations do it and it's recognizable. One of my favorite things, one of my programs and a few other agencies got together, and there's this Small Steps for Big Changes website on Healthy Mendocino. So if you type in Healthy Mendocino Small Steps, it comes up with this great reference and resource guide. And so if you want to do fun physical activities outside with your kids that are low or no cost, there's where to find hiking and biking trails, where you could go bird watching or whale watching, all sorts of outdoor family fun, and then also eating well. So it talks about where there's cooking classes, farmers markets, healthier food on the go. So instead of going to those fast food places where you could pick up something that's healthier for your family if you've got to go quick. Community gardens, which combines physical activity with eating well and getting the kids out there in the garden and planting. You could rent plots. So there's information on how to obtain a plot and who to contact depending upon what community you live in. There's emergency food resources. So if there's the food bank or a food cupboard in your area, that is also covered on the Small Steps page. Amazing, amazing resource. We're also working on Harvest of the Month in the schools. Ukiah and Fort Bragg have had really strong Harvest of the Month programs, which is something where we work with local farmers, and whatever is being in season that month, we go and introduce it, and there's a whole lesson plan online. It's really easy, and it's a rotating schedule, so I think it's 3 years. So over the course of 3 years, for each month, there's 3 different fruits or vegetables that the kids can try, and we know that familiarity breeds them being more and more willing to consume that. So just this year, we've brought Harvest of the Month to several classrooms, not all of them yet in Willits. We're hoping by the end of our 3rd year, we'll have all of the kids being able to have the Harvest of the Month, but it is here now and active. We're working on the active transportation, which I explained a little bit before, encouraging the walking and biking instead of getting rides. There's lots of communities that are offering free nutrition classes or workshops. The community gardens, which I mentioned in the small steps. And then I just happen to know that there's so many like health fairs that have such wonderful information that are promoting all sorts of healthy behaviors. And then letting people know about the farmers market match. Here again for low-income people who are receiving their CalFresh food stamp benefits, they can get a match for going and spending money at the farmers market. They use their card and they get additional tokens. And then another one of my favorite resources is eatfresh.org. And you can do lots of stuff. It has recipes. That's its main focus. There's also nutrition education classes that you just take online. If someone gives you some sort of vegetable that you've never heard of or a fruit, you could just type the name of that thing in on Eat Fresh and it'll come up with recipes where you can use that. Or if you're having someone come over to your house that has a dietary restriction, or, you know, if they're vegan or if they're gluten-free or if they have diabetes, you can type in those dietary restrictions and it'll come up with all of these recipes that are safe to use for that condition. It's absolutely fabulous. And you could just go through and say you want dinner ideas that are, you know, under 30 minutes. And all of it is healthy, really high in fruit and vegetables.
Is that a national thing?
It actually started out of San Francisco through funding from the SNAP Ed grant. It's kind of more statewide. You can access it nationally, but it's really only being promoted currently in California. So everybody has a part to play in this. First, realizing, too, that it's not just personal behaviors that affect obesity. We like to tend to blame the individuals. It really is like the whole community and the environment that affects whether or not people are obese, and we see that because there's clusters. Something everybody could do is advocate for healthy policies in the schools and also ask for the enforcement. So if there's the policies in place, making sure, especially as a parent, coming up with new ideas instead of selling cookie dough or candy bars. There's other stuff. Eagle Peak does a wonderful color run. It does not make as much money as the cookie dough or the candy, unfortunately, but we have to step up as a community and make sure things like that gain traction. Because that is so much healthier. And then ask for healthier foods in your store. Like I said, when you asked about Safeway putting fresh fruit up there, it's not going to happen if people aren't requesting it. But if people are that shop there are requesting it, and the more people that are requesting it, the more likely it is to happen because they want to make those people happy. And being involved in what's going on in your community and at the state and county and federal levels, there's a lot of changes, and we have a new Secretary of Education. Find out what she wants and what she's moving to, and make sure your voice is heard. So, write a letter, make a phone call. Modeling healthy behavior for your kids and other community members. Talking to the community members about the resources that you know and about what's going on in the schools. That word of mouth, and when people realize that's what people are talking about, they'll talk about it too. And the thing with writing letters and making phone calls, there's a study and it showed that on a national level, for every one person that writes a letter or makes the phone call, they give the weight of like 25,000 voters to that one, because nobody really does it. On a local level, it's more about like 800 for each phone call or letter, but it's important to keep that moving. And then volunteering too, and if you can't volunteer, show up to the PTO meetings or the school board meetings or the city council meetings. They might be planning like infrastructure projects, and you want a sidewalk in your area. You can advocate for those things, and if it doesn't happen now, they know that there's a community need. Is there any questions?
Are the school lunch programs aware of this sort of thing? Or?
Yes,
Yeah.
they're very aware. I work with all the food service, the three major food service directors in the county, and then sometimes with the others. But all of the new wellness policy stuff that's going through, and the smart snacks and the other things, they're usually in charge of making those requests to the school board for those changes. And there's a problem though, because they don't have any power for enforcement, but they're in charge of the enforcement. That's why it's kind of important to be involved. And especially Ukiah currently is working to try to shift the enforcement over to like the principal or the vice principal. So yeah, because nobody listens to the one in charge of the cafeteria. But if parents spoke up, and that's the thing, is advocating. Parents need to speak up. Because if there's squeaky wheels out there, they're gonna get taken care of. Yes, there are. We just did one at 7 schools in October. Right now, we're the ones, as the health department and Walk Bike Mendocino, a partnership with them, kind of organizing that. We're doing some events in May, trying to get some bike to school days going. There's not a lot of parents out there that we've been able to run across, and asking teachers, because the teachers know who the parents are that are volunteering in the classrooms. There's been a little bit of hesitancy to make those bridges. We've been really kind of trying to push. It's like, who's going to help out, give us, give them our names so we can make those things happen. So we're trying to get the parents to do something. I believe it's Round Valley Elementary does like a walking Wednesday. So there's something that's been continually going. Thank you very much. Yeah,
I really
thank you.
enjoyed it.
Thank you.